Sometime last night, I was asked, Dada, what would be the title of your talk tomorrow? And I remembered my conversation with Michael because I was the one asking, give me a title or a theme or a topic and anything. And I said, there is no such thing as anything. So Michael was saying, perhaps since it will be very close to the Pentecost, it might be also good to look into Pentecost. And so initially I wrote, I think my sharing will be focusing on the Pentecost. And later on, because there were two other messages came midnight, and then early this morning I typed. I think the one who received can confirm if I say it right, or you may make a violent reaction if I say it wrong. I said, I wrote Pentecost and SHCC. That was the Sacred Heart Charismatic Community, the Pentecost and Sacred Heart Charismatic Community. I think that was what I sent early this morning before 6 o'clock, I suppose, because 5:45 I left the garage for Talamban, and I had a very long day today. Now, that would be a kind of short introduction. As a kind of opening statement, I will divide the sharing in three simple parts. One, I will be inviting you to go to the upper room. And the second, I'm inviting you to swim with the Word and in the heart of the Spirit so that a real Pentecost can be born. So those are the three parts of my sharing. And as an opening prayer of this sharing, let me read the Acts of the Apostles on the happening on the Pentecost day. When the day of Pentecost came, all the believers were gathered together in one place. Suddenly, there was a noise from the sky which sounded like a strong wind blowing, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. Then they saw what looked like tongues of fire, which spread out and touched each person there. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to talk in other languages as the Spirit enabled them to speak. There were Jews living in Jerusalem, religious people who had come from every country in the world. When they heard this noise, a large crowd gathered. They were all excited because all of them heard the believers talking in their own languages. In amazement and wonder, they exclaimed, "These people who are talking like this are Galileans. How is it then that all of us hear them speaking in our own native languages? We are from Parthia, Media, and Elam, from Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, from Pontus and Asia, from Phrygia and Pamphylia, from Egypt and regions of Libya near Cyrene. Some of us are from Rome, both Jews, and some of us are from Crete and Arabia, yet all of us hear them speaking in our own languages about great things that God has done." But others made fun of the believers, saying, "These people are drunk." The word of the Lord. Good evening. The Acts of the Apostle was having the same author with the Gospel of Luke. He divided his reflection about Jesus in two parts. The Gospel of Luke contains all that happened since the birth until the resurrection of the Lord. And you can read the Gospel of Luke. It is a missionary gospel. While after his resurrection, Jesus commanded his disciples, "Go to Jerusalem and wait there until the gift is given." And where were these believers congregated in Jerusalem? The Acts of the Apostles simply name it upper room. Was it the same room where Jesus had his Last Supper? We don't really know. But it was very clear that they were congregated in the upper room. It looks like perhaps our center, the Burning Bush. Do you still call this center as Burning Bush? It looks like our center, perhaps. The upper room. For those having arthritis here, you should have chosen the lower ground, so you don't have to climb how many stairs. Have you tried counting how many steps are actually that you climb to reach the upper room here at the Burning Bush Center? Have you tried to count? Hi. Hi. Thank you very much. So, but it is a good exercise actually. All the arthritis will be gone when you climb more often at the Burning Bush. Because one, it is a physical exercise actually. You don't have to go to gymnasium. Just come to Burning Bush Center and you will be healed from your arthritis. Because the Spirit is here. And the Spirit heals everyone. And the Spirit make you clean, and the Spirit gives you new life. The Burning Bush. And so they were congregated at the upper room. Perhaps that upper room was a closed room, just like that of ours. Gitrangka kuno. And they were told, we were told that they were in the upper room, fear of the Jews. You heard the stories of Jesus' resurrection. All of a sudden, despite the doors were locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus stood in their midst. But what interested me more is not all about the locked doors, but what the believers did in the upper room. My guess, if I'm right, they were doing two things. One, fellowship, the Eucharist, and the other was sharing the word. Perhaps they were talking about what happened from the birth of Jesus until the scandal of Good Friday, and then the amazing story of his appearance to different disciples in different occasions in different time. And it must be ignite a kind of enthusiasm, new spirit, and then it dawns on them that Jesus is alive. And they must have every evening shared the broken bread, shared, blessed by God, and fed them. They must have gone home having been fed by the bread and by the word, the Eucharist and the word. Those were perhaps the major activities of the upper room. For tonight, let me invite you to reread the upper room. And thus, I'm moving now to the second part. When you are at the upper room, and when they were at the upper room, they were actually swimming into God's life and love. Mary was there with them, and they were praying, bombarding heaven. And it was so beautiful, actually. I was sitting there, listening to you singing the worship songs. And perhaps that was what they did at the upper room. Having been strengthened by the Eucharist and having shared the word, in order for them to be totally consumed by fire and totally consumed by the Spirit, they bombarded heaven with their cries and with their words, with their songs, and with the deepest sense of desire that the experience of being with Jesus should not be cut. Because perhaps the resurrection is all about the continuation of that intimacy that Jesus imparted to them and witnessed to them during His earthly ministry. And after resurrection, there were no more closed doors, no more walls that separate that intimacy. And that's why they wanted that they will be totally consumed by Jesus' presence. And so, the promise of Jesus, at the same time His command, you should go to Jerusalem and you are to wait until the promised gift shall be given. And so, at the upper room, they were totally consumed in prayer, awaiting the gifts. In a more traditional practice before the Pentecost, particularly for us SVDs, there are days that every evening we would offer ourselves to the Spirit. Because the Pentecost, I will say later, is an experience of being transformed. And in the more traditional, in the Philippines, we are fond of 9 days of Misa de Gallo, and then 9 days of wakes for the dead. And the tradition of the Catholic Church is always, there are also 9 days of novena every time an important occasion happened. And it is observed, and particularly by us SVDs, because the very heart of St. Arno Jansen is actually the fire, the Spirit. And then we offer our evening prayers in 9 days in honor of the Spirit, but at the same time inviting the Spirit to imbue us, to consume us as a missionaries. Because at the end of the day, the Pentecost that we are awaiting, wala pa naman, only this coming Sunday, is in view of the mission. The Pentecost will have no relevance if we cannot see it from the vantage point of mission. And theologians would always say that the Pentecost as a fruit of the intense prayer at the upper room marks two things. One is the apex or culmination of the Paschal mystery. And the second is the beginning of the mission of the church. You memorize that one. And I will not deal with that one. And I will be driving it totally something very practical, but I hope These are doable things. And so, Pentecost, having been at the upper room, having been consumed in prayer by the Spirit, and the traditional sharings always mark 3 points of Pentecost. One is the giving of a gift. The second is mission of the church. And the third would be the completion of the Paschal mystery of Jesus. As promised, I will not deal with all these three. There were already so many people talk about this, and rightly so. And that's the second part. And before I proceed, after 40 days since the day of resurrection, what have you seen? Have you seen the resurrected Jesus? Who have seen the resurrected Jesus? Raise your hands. Only one. And including me, we are only two. Oh, wow. So you are afraid. You are afraid. How can you celebrate Pentecost if you are afraid? Have you heard the resurrected Jesus calls you and said, "Do not be afraid. It is me." When storms come your way, when seemingly your human spirit is becoming like a smoldering light, almost died, and then the hand of the Lord said, "It is me. Don't be afraid." Or have you heard the resurrected Lord invites you, "Do you have something to eat there?" Because He had already prepared fishes in a charcoal fire along the coast and inviting you to have a breakfast so that you have enough energy to witness to His resurrection the whole day. Have you heard Him talking and inviting you for breakfast? I know you are expecting something different, but I will be offering you totally different thing. But again, even lawyers understand we cannot witness and we cannot say anything in the court if you have not seen, we have not heard, or we have not been there. That was the reason why I brought you to the upper room. And thus, the following messages of mine. Pentecost and the Sacred Heart Charismatic Community. What will we celebrate as a community this coming Sunday? I suppose that we will be celebrating a fellowship. A fellowship means not eating, because it is too superficial. Fellowship that I will be referring to tonight is actually a life imbued by God, a life imbued by the Spirit, and a life which is woven. We are all different here. But fellowship at the Pentecost is all about our different life is tied and weaved together so that we become one of the mosaic piece that transforms our community into oneness. That's fellowship. If I were to translate a little bit, going beyond the Acts of the Apostles, St. John, in his second letter, talks about community. And he says, community is not a physical building. Community is not about physical persons there. Community is all about one dream shared, one vision lived committedly, and different lives are gathered together, and then they become one. And that's the whole concept of community. And I suppose that Sacred Heart Charismatic Community has been renewed by the resurrected Lord, and then has been at the upper room, and then has been consumed by the fire of God, and thus we become one community. And that shared life, that shared community is what I call fellowship. We are enjoying our being with one another and with the Lord. And that's what makes actually the first Christian community is so attractive. Every single day, their numbers growing not only by one or two, but hundreds, if not thousands. Why? They share their lives as one. No more private properties. They were all communist. They were all communist. But I'm not asking you to sell all your houses and then surrender all your bank accounts. Forget about it. Because the most important is that we are partakers at the fellowship of sharing one life, which is the life of the resurrected Lord in this community. Because that resurrection must be so attractive, so beautiful, and it invites those who came here last time when I celebrated the Mass. I made a comment, and somebody asked me, Father, your Mass is actually live streamed. Because I said, gamay rata, no? Gamay rata. And I hope there are many listening to this. If you cannot come here, you shared your passion, your life, imbued by the resurrected Lord from home. Because there are no walls that separate us as members of the charismatic, the Sacred Heart Charismatic Community. Love is more powerful than walls. Love can break the wall. Love dismantles everything. And that's why Pentecost. The sound of love is so strong. Parang Odette. Where were you when Odette came? Boy, kami sa community na. We were my room is on the 4th floor. But when 7 o'clock came, we were on the 8th floor enjoying dinner. And all of a sudden, brown out. Then the sound of our building. Shh! My God. Even the building, the 9-story building of the SVD community was like dancing. And I remember that moment when I read earlier the story of the Pentecost. Basin mo, urog gud ang tibuok building. And nahadlok silang tanan. But it was a joyful coming of the gift. But you were requesting shaking what could be shaken in your songs earlier. I heard it. Shaking what could be shaken. And I hope the Spirit has shaken the foundation of your faith after hearing and seeing the resurrected Jesus. Because the Spirit that we are waiting for is the Spirit that the resurrected Jesus sent from the Father. But fellowship. Fellowship will make Sacred Heart Charismatic Community is so beautiful, is so attractive, and is so inviting. And those who are listening to me online, your communion, your fellowship with us here at the Burning Bush Center is very attractive. And then I'm expecting on Pentecost that many more hearts and families joining the Sacred Heart Charismatic Community. Because that's Pentecost. It shakes us and then it transforms us. And so, fellowship. And that fellowship gears towards the second message, unity. Unity is what was read earlier. Imagine, all those coming from different regions earlier, they are coming from different cultures, and they listen people talking in their own mother tongue. Saint Joseph Reinademes, our first missionary to China, interprets that as a language of love, as the only language that powerful enough that could bridge all the differences of cultures and human individuals. Love. I agree with him on that end. But the Pentecost is all about the gift of unity. The gift of unity is a moral choice. And that gift of unity has its own consequence. There are times that we cannot all agree on many things in the community. Let's be realistic of it. There are differences and there are different thoughts, different hearts. But unity that I am referring to here is that we, because of the resurrection and because of the Spirit transcending our differences, because there is a higher mission given to us by the Pentecost, that we are symbols of God's oneness. We are living in a world where, oh my gosh, you go to Ayala Center, you see so many different peoples there, different attitudes there. And how are we going to experience that unity that I pose in the term fellowship? It must be starting with us, here at the Burning Bush Center. Unity. Unity is not all about eliminating our differences. No. No. Because even the Trinity, they are all different. The Father is not the Son is not the Spirit, but we say that they transcended their differences because they have only one life. And that must be the characteristic of Sacred Heart Charismatic Community because of the Pentecost. I think I was quite unfortunate this semester. I made a mistake. From the month of February, I accepted an invitation from the campus ministry. My being chaplain of South Campus is a temporary because there is no priest available there. So since I am a presidential assistant for mission and I did not know how to do it, I have no contact with people. So when the chaplain of South Campus left the university because he is needed in Holy Name University, I told the president, can I help there? But you are having office. I said, yeah, I am not a monk in the office. I am a missionary. How can I be presidential assistant for mission if I don't even talk to people? Can I just go there? And then he said, bahala ka. Bahala ka. And so, I went to the South Campus. And later on, they invited me, Father, we want you to handle our recollections for the graduating batch. And I thought it was only for the School of Business and Economics. Only to find out that all the graduating batches this year underwent recollections, and I have to be the speaker. From School of Education, School of Law and Governance, and School of Business and Economics, School of Arts and Sciences, Architecture and Finance. Mura ka nabuang nako. And then, but I learned something very beautiful in relation to Pentecost, and that's my message for you on unity. To the accountants, I said, if only accountants are honest like Jesus, honest to the last centavo, and then you speak that honesty in your working places, what a heaven we could build in the Philippines. If lawyers can speak the language of solidarity and the second chance, we can make free the CPDRC and set them all free because of the honesty of lawyers. And my point is that unity and all those languages earlier, I could translate it now. What is your professional background? Civil engineer. You will never compromise the size of kabilya when you are putting a post para hindi ma-collapse ang building. O kinsay accountant dire. Ay, you cannot steal one single centavo kasi that's the cost of poverty here in the Philippines. Imagine if we can go later on to our working places and bringing the message of Pentecost, but say it in different languages, but actually the message there is the same. Jesus. What a beautiful world that we could construct and establish in this city. So beautiful. Eh, kung magulang ka, when you go there, go home later, and your only heart and your only love and your only passion is bringing up your children as God-fearing. Wow, heaven. Langit na ang buhay natin dito. I was very happy when I celebrated the Mass because I have 2 sacristans. And they were very small when I celebrated the Mass. Now they are readers now. Ha! Next time, pare na. I know, Michael will not allow it. But, let's transcend little bit the message of unity on that note. That unity is not all about eliminating our differences. No. We transcend our differences into Christ-like. And that's the most beautiful message of Pentecost. So that when we go later and witness like Peter, I am an accountant imbued by Jesus' honesty. I am a civil engineer only building up heaven here in this world. The kingdom of God is here. I am the one building it because I was commissioned by Jesus and I must become like Jesus, who is a civil engineer for humanity. Beautiful. Because the unity I am referring to is the message. The message. We go out and bringing only one message. Jesus. That Jesus is actually the one so attractive. Pope Benedict reminded, by the way, each one of us when we celebrate the Pentecost. On Pentecost Day, let us be reminded to rediscover 2 powerful incidents or occasions in our lives. 1, baptism. We were baptized both by water and by the Spirit. And Benedict said, we should discover the power of the Spirit in our baptism. And then, when we are already like them, mature enough, we have the confirmation. What does that mean? Tiguang na ta. Misyonero na ta. That every one of us, who among you have attended all these conferences because of the new ecclesiology of Pope Francis? Synodality. You heard the term, synodality. And there are 3 words, powerful, in that synodality. One is communion. The fellowship and unity that I have. That mission of the church is not only the task of a priest. Mission of the church is our task as believers. And the second is participation. Ay, hindi pwede hanggang dito lang. We participate in the public mission of the church. And the third is mission proper. we are all set out as Pentecostal individuals to witness that Jesus is truly alive. That's unity. And the third message of Pentecost for our community would be the transformed faith, courage. Pentecost transforms fear to courage, sadness to laughter and joy, tears into complete happiness. That was the reason why I asked, have you seen the resurrected Lord? Because if I were to read further, right after the story of Pentecost is Peter's message. You don't believe me? Here. Peter's message. And Peter was one of the weakest disciple on Good Friday. Hadlok siya sa babae. Hadlok siya namatay. Diliway. Di ba nakita takad to? Diliway. Lain ang imo nakita to. Hadlok. But all of a sudden, that fearful Peter is transformed. My message for the community, which is the third message, is Sacred Heart Charismatic Community, having been loved by the Lord, having been imbued, having been at the fellowship of the upper room, we should become more bolder, courageous. We are all prophets of resurrection. Di na tamaulaw. Pwede na mo tamo ato dito sa Ayala, actually, and invite people. Uy, there is a Sacred Heart Charismatic Community there. Come and join us. Walang ulaw-ulaw diha. Ay, I remember we were challenged by Cardinal Tagle. It is not done here in Cebu, no? In Manila, these Pentecostal churches, yung kanang gagmay na mga sekta, sakay sa bus, nag-preach good. Nagbasa lang sila ng Biblia dito and then sobre. Pero di ko importante yung sobre. Para ni kang Cardinal Tagle, siguro part put ana yung sobre, pero amantang offering unya. Ikaw tawa ka dyan. Pero, Bishop Chito Tagle said, let's think seriously about that one. Is it for livelihood? Or is it really because of the consciousness for mission? That by virtue of baptism and confirmation, we are actually to stand on the rooftop, inside the bus, or inside the boat, and then talk about Jesus who is resurrected. And then he told us, come on, you go and then take the BLTB and you preach inside. Preach. But, Maneo, by chance, this fire of God, they had Thursday now, they are in Talamban. And then Maneo was the speaker. And then naglili ako dito. And then he said, survey said that those who are coming for LSS, kasi it was actually in view of LSS of Fire of God. Those who are coming for LSS, most of the time, they are attending because they heard somebody saying that, oy, naay Sacred Heart Charismatic Community dito sa former Jesuit basic education campus. Kaya kung walang tao nag-ingon na naay Sacred Heart Charismatic Community dire, wala gano'n tao matampong sa atong prayer meeting. Walang yung upper floor o kitara. Di ba? And then Bishop Chito Tagle made a kind of very good point for our reflection on Pentecost Day. As members of a community being loved, being inspired, being imbued by the Spirit, we should become more bolder, courageous. kinsay mga hackers diha. These are wild imaginations of mine, hackers. If we can just boost a message to all accounts on smart, no, parang one pindot lang, thousands, millions of people say, there is prayer meeting in Burning Bush. Pwede ta mag-hack na, di man sala siguro, ano? For the spreading of the good news. We become bolder and bolder. My point is that make all venues, all tools, but we need a courageous soul. Because that's Pentecost is all about. We are transformed. We are renewed. And that's the third message. Sacred Heart Charismatic Community should become more bolder, courageous in witnessing, both by word and by living or relationship, that Jesus is truly resurrected and we are bearers of His Spirit. And the fourth message of Pentecost, what we said actually in the story I read earlier on the Pentecost is the speaking of tongues. Speaking of tongues, di ba? But there were so many, 11 siguro. There are 11, but they all spoke in different languages. Pentecost, I suppose, is the festival of the bestowal of gifts. Gifts, regalo. I'm not a civil engineer. I am a priest. But you cannot be like me. I cannot be like you. I don't know how to account money, but I can spend my money instantly. Hurot dayon. Hurot dayon. Kabaw lang ko mag-spend, pero di ko kabaw mag-liquidate. Naay tao na magli-liquidate to. But on the Pentecost, we are celebrating the wealth, the richness of our community. Super dato ang Sacred Heart Charismatic Community. Kung tanaw nato through the lens of gifts. Daddy Hiron was very disappointed with me. Kay I told him, Dad, can I say something? He said, what? I said, why there are only 2 people preach here? Because they are gifted. I said, no, they are not gifted at all. Boring. Like me when I'm talking, it's too boring. What do you mean actually? I said, we are all gifted. You have the gift of healing. That one is a joker, make everybody happy. This one is too serious, philosopher, make everybody thinks. This one, grabe ang galing, magbilang ng pera. Make everybody honest. Ang galing-galing to. Matibay ang mga buildings at mga tulay. Gifts. Gifts. But remember, the gifts we receive, this is not for us. The gift that we receive is for the building up of a community. That's why I said, nato good ang Sacred Heart Charismatic Community if only we dare to share our life as a gift for each other. And that same gift is actually our missionary mandate to the bigger community called the church. Don't be afraid of sharing your life as a gift. I listened to an SVD missiologist talking about theology of attractiveness of Pope Francis. everybody is elated when Pope Francis is talking. And it seems that there are some words that he used that makes everybody either very happy or think or reacting. But that's how he makes the life of the Catholic Church becoming very interesting. And of course, there are conflicts too. And that confrere of mine from Chicago, and he said, what makes Christian community beautiful is the different gifts shared for the building up of Jesus' community. And that's Pentecost. When the disciples were speaking in tongues, they bring people from different corners of the world into one understanding, shared life. That's gift. And I repeat, yung kuripot, hindi magiging masaya sa buhay niya. Yung kuripot, siya ang dahilan sa lahat ng kahirapan dito sa mundong ito. But if we are generous in sharing ourselves and our lives, the world becomes richer and richer. Di ba? What was the theme of the Eucharistic Congress? It is in His poverty that we become richer. So, sharing the gifts, there is nobody who is too poor until he or she could not give. My favorite phrase is always, kung wala ka ng pera, sarili mo nang ibibigay. And that's the best part of Pentecost. Because that was the love. If I were to say that Pentecost is the outpouring of love, which is the greatest gift needed by the world and by humanity, I could also say that Pentecost is actually a festival of life-giving spirit. On Pentecost, this coming Sunday, we shall no longer be the same like who we are tonight. Because on Sunday at the Pentecost festival, we are all renewed and we are all given new life, life of the Spirit. I repeated my definition of life in the Spirit here when I celebrated the Mass, which actually my definition when I celebrated the Mass somewhere in CDS. There is a technical school there. After ACT, I think it's owned by UC. There was once, Yes, there was once we had our youth revival there, and then I said, life in the Spirit is all about holding God with our one hand while we are also holding humanity with the other. And then we bridge them together so that they will be in communion. And I suppose that that's the greatest gift of Pentecost, a bestowal of a life-giving relationship. We are in love with the resurrected Lord as much as we are in love with the entire humanity in need of hearing the message of love. Life-giving relationship. And I hope you will not be very angry when I say, when I was requested by the Fire of God ministry to talk about their name, and out of all the many explanations I gave then, I told them, the fire, your name is actually a purifying fire. Fire that makes you free. Fire that makes you clean. But if you want, the fire that Elijah experienced was the life of faithfulness and being virtuous before God. He was left all alone. And he fought against all those Baal prophets and wrong priests or pseudo priests, all alone. But he never bent down. He never gave up. He stood his ground and then at all costs remained clean and holy before Yahweh. And on Pentecost, we are celebrating that life of faithfulness to the Lord. The gift that Jesus promised was his own life. The gift that Jesus promised was love. Love that binds the Trinity together. The gift that Jesus promised was a purified life because of his self-offering. And for our community, Pentecost becomes more meaningful when we allow ourselves to be once again be purified. You know, the spiritual authors talk about imitatio Christi, imitating Christ, or some say becoming Christ-like. And on Pentecost, I suppose, the fire that the Lord sent purifies us. And thus, Sacred Heart Charismatic Community is a community which Jesus purifies with his own life and love. His Spirit is here with us. And we continue being here in the upper room because without upper room, there is no point of us going out. The upper room is the venue where we become one with the resurrected Lord so that we share in his Spirit. That's the fifth. The sixth message. I said traditionally, Pentecost is all about mission, universal mission of the church. And Pope Francis, I said earlier, there are three terms. One is communion, another is participation, and a kind of overlapping if I were to be very critical of it, because the last word is mission. Our community is a missionary community. Do not forget that one. Our community is a missionary community. We were united, we were made, and the reason for our existence, I suppose, is for mission. Otherwise, there is no point of coming to the upper room. Or the consequence of being in the upper room is actually for mission. the Lord asked the disciples, wait in Jerusalem. You are to proclaim the good news beginning in Jerusalem until the end of the world. But first, wait in Jerusalem. Our community is a community in mission. And our mission is not only, I said, it is not only to come here every Wednesday or every Saturday for the Mass, or third Saturday ba yun? Huh? Oh, every Saturday for GPM. Because when we come every Saturday for GPM, we are actually coming here to draw a strength. Because that strength is the necessary weapon that we will bring out from Sunday to Friday until we come again. Remember, even Jesus himself, having preached about the Father's love, he withdrew. Withdrew to a place not known to Ayala Center, but hidden, where he could be in communion. And that was the reason why I always say, gamay ra ta, no? Dapat modako good ang community. Molambo good siya, motubo in terms of numbers. And I challenge you all the time. Next time when you come, you are not only to bring your family here, bring another family with you. That's mission. That's mission. If I were to continue reading after the witnessing of Peter, next is actually the missionary journey of the apostles. And they are moving from one place to another. And the other day in my conversation with, the Catholic Charismatic Carolinian is at the brink of death. The last few members will graduate this coming next week already. So wala na. And so I told them, don't worry, I will invite you, because when the new students are coming back, we will begin again campaigning from one class to another, telling people that there is a community called Catholic Charismatic Carolinians in the University of San Carlos. And then one of them asked, di ka maulaw, Father? I said, that's the scandal of the Pentecost. If you are a saint, you are not a Pentecostal community. And you are not a transformed soul. Mission. And Pope Francis invites you and me to journey together in mission. So that through us, people of different kind coming from different communities hear only one word: love. Jesus. And to close, 15 minutes before 9, to close. The upper room brings us to mission. But please do not forget that Pentecost is a public declaration too that we are the home of the Spirit. Every one of us. And I remember the homily given by Daddy Hiron to make you a little bit afraid of Pentecost. He said, quoting Origen, Kung nakasala daw tayo, since we are tabernacle and we are the temple of God and God is in us, every time we are not doing the mission, parang tinutorture natin ang Panginoon na nasa puso natin. Kung nakasala tayo and then we cause troubles in the community, parang tinutorture natin. Di ba nakakatakot yun? If we are truly the tabernacle, if we are truly the temple, what makes our life attractive on that end is to keep the temple burn with love. That's why the center is called the burning bush. Yung kanta, sana every day is a Valentine's Day, I will change it. Sana for us, Sacred Heart Charismatic Community, every day must be a Pentecost day because we are transformed and renewed. Thank you.